Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi with a phenomenal honor personally and professionally for me today. This is kind of a redo of a podcast that was done in December of 2018 with my childhood friends, Ben and Mara Cohara. So Ben and Mara Cohara, welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. Super happy to have you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. We're excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. And so quick little disclaimer for everybody out there, as we're in the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic and pandemic, obviously thoughts and prayers going out to everybody out there. Huge shout out to our first responders, our medical professionals who are out there doing what they can on a daily basis to keep us safe and healthy. So huge thank you there. But, as I'm recording from a small office inside my house in Phoenix, Arizona, Ben and Mara inside their house there in Weatherby Lake in the northern part of Kansas City, Missouri. So obviously, life is going to happen. So kids could come in, dogs go, doorbells ring, anything could happen. My kids can burst in anytime, dogs, mailman, deliver a package. So I apologize for any life stuff that may happen throughout this interview. But yeah, so super happy to have you here. So Ben and Mara, if you wouldn't mind, please, for our viewers and our listeners out there, just give a quick introduction for you and everything that makes you uniquely you and awesome.
Do you want to start?
No, go ahead.
I'm Mara Cohara, and I am a partner in a law firm in Kansas City. Well, I'm in the Kansas City office. It's a national law firm, Lathrop, GPM. We just merged with another firm in January, so we've expanded across the country and changed our name. So from our podcast last time, our name has changed. I've been with this firm 19 years, only firm I've ever worked for. I'm also on my firm's executive committee, practice group manager for the environmental tort group, and probably most importantly, I'm his wife and our and mother to our two children, Mathan and Myra Cohara, which you've been threatened to not interrupt, but as you said, life may happen.
Very good, and I'm Ben Cohara. Tim and I have known each other since we were probably 12 years old, maybe 7th grade. Went to high school together. I went on to University of Missouri, majored in finance and banking, and I've spent about the last 20 years in finance and business development roles out of Kansas City. I worked at Ernst & Young doing consulting. I worked for a startup app company out of Kansas City named Handmark, which was later acquired by Sprint. And I spent about 8 years at Hallmark Cards, and now I've spent the last year with Blue Scope Properties Group, which is a real estate development company, and I'm a commercial finance manager there. And married to Mara for, 18 years?
Yeah.
18 years, and 2 beautiful kids, and everything's good.
Well, that's awesome. And again, I know that with both of you having jobs and kids at home and schooling them, for you to take some time out of your day to be on this podcast and spend some time with me, truly appreciative, humbled, and honored. I really do. It just warms my heart. So thank you for making the time to do this. And so as we sit here and talk about leadership, and obviously for the people who are watching or listening, so much of my podcast is military centric, military driven. That's what I've known for 25 years. So this is a unique opportunity. So, very rarely do I get to have civilians on my podcast. So really excited for this discussion. So when we think leadership, when we think about the practical application of leadership, or how you understand it, or how you come to personify leadership, just at face value, what does that mean to each of you?
I think for me, leadership truly, and it's probably, and especially in this crazy time that we're going through right now, it's leading by example. You're not a leader if you're not leaving with the folks you're leading a reason to do good for the company or the team or whatever. It's not for personal gain. It's definitely to make whatever you're leading better in spite of what you need or want. And so really, I think being a good example is kind of what I now am thinking a good leader and what type of leader I want to be.
Very good. That's what I was going to use as well. So I'll change mine up a bit. I would say creating a vision for your team, and then finding a way to motivate your team to implement that vision. And I think a key way to do that is leading by example. But again, I think a true leader, a great leader, is able to create that vision that motivates the team to get there.
Now, for each one of you, as you look back from the time, we all graduated high school together, you two went off to college together. So, if you went back those 20 years, Mara, like before you started with the firm or before both of you entered the professional workforce, could you have ever imagined where you are right now? And what is some advice that you would go back and tell your young 20-something self that you know now that you wouldn't have had the capacity to understand back then?
No, I think about that actually a lot of late, because I've probably hit kind of the apex of my career of where I can go. I mean, other than leading the firm someday, and I don't know if that makes sense for anyone, but I mean, being the main leader or CEO, if you will. But be patient, and that's one thing that I was told countless times. I still have trouble with it. But I can remember being that first-year associate sitting in my office, listening to people talk about the law, saying, I don't know that I'll ever be to that point or people will ever listen to me. And, it's sort of bittersweet because you're wanting to be back, 20 years ago. But so much has happened, the learning curve, the respect you gained or lost. But I think you truly have to put a lot of time and effort. Nothing's easy, and you've got to be patient. And you're not going to be a leader unless you actually are putting in, the work to do that. And I think we're seeing a lot of times now when we see raising our kids, they get frustrated in 5 minutes if they can't come to an answer on something, or if they aren't picked a captain of the team right away. And it's like, one, did you earn it? Two, did you put the work in to do that? And three, have you gained the respect of people, to be that? And then just chill out. It's going to come, but it'll come in due time. So I should have told I wish I would have listened to my parents and others in my life early on to just, it'll come if you work for it. But I was definitely impatient for a while.
I think my advice is consistent with yours, is that, at a very young age, you don't know what you're going to want to grow up to be. And it's a fun question to ask kids, is what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's a fun discussion. Some might say, a professional soccer player. Some might say an astronaut, and that's great. But how many people actually become a professional soccer player and astronaut? Very, very few. But I think moving along that, I think sometimes kids start to feel some pressure that they need to know what they're going to do when they grow up. And probably especially in high school. And I just, I think obviously after your senior year in high school, you have to make a key decision as far as, am I going to go to college? Am I going to go to the military? Am I going to go to a trade school? But that's really the first key decision you have to make. But even if you say, I'm going to go into college, you don't have to know what you're going to be immediately at that point. You can take a couple years of school to decide, all right, this is what I really want to do. I want to get into, healthcare. I want to go be a teacher, or I want to go to business school, whatever the case may be. And so I would try to say to alleviate that pressure on kids growing up, that you have plenty of time to decide what you want to be. And then two is, they're so young. They're so young, and I never could have been a doctor or would have been able to be successful as a doctor, but I just remember looking at, hey, maybe I could be a doctor, but man, I'd be in school till I'm 32. That's so old. I can't go to school till I'm 32. And then you look back at 32 is still really, really young, right? And so, Mara and I are both 43, 44 right now. We still feel young. But, had we decided to go to medical school, which wasn't a fit for either one of us, we'd be 32, and that's a lot of work to put in. But then, you really get to go live your life, and a great life helping people from there. So I would just, to reiterate, you don't have to make your mind up at a very early age, and just remember, you're still very, very young, regardless of what career you choose from there.
I think those are both phenomenal pieces of advice. One of the things for me is, patience is a measure of perspective. you can only have as much patience as your perspective will allow. And the more you experience, the more conversation you have, the more life experience, perhaps, the bigger your perspective. I think the more capacity we have to be patient with what we understand or don't understand, or maybe we have a better understanding of the stuff we can't understand. We know what we don't know. We're able to adjust there. And then Ben, like I'm 100% living proof of the concept you talked about. I joined the military because I had no clue. I know I needed structure. I totally needed something. And so I joined the military, became an airman, and I did that. And it wasn't until I was 36 years old that I found out what I was passionate about, that I found out what I absolutely wanted to do. So, I'm glad that I was able to find something that was able to give me a decent lifestyle that allowed me to grow and learn and do everything that I wanted to do. But, I'm absolutely so you figure I had to turn 18 twice, for me to figure out what I wanted to do. So that's absolutely huge. And then, so with that, if you, as you've gone through and you've morphed and you've made those decisions, if you were starting a team like right now and you had to lead people, aside from the fact that you want to personify what that means, what are some of the first things that you would want to tell them as far as what it's going to take for them to be successful in your specific endeavor for what you've chose to do?
Go ahead.
Sure, I can start that. It seems rather simple, but being able to get along with people, that's so important, and you've got to be a likable person. So whether that comes through in an interview or you'll click, even if you fake it through an interview, you'll find out really quickly when you're put on a team. If you can't get along with people, you're not going to be successful. So that is a real skill, is being likable. Obviously, other skills that are very important are being hard workers, being a hard worker, willing to learn, willing to put in your share, kind of put the team first before yourself. And those are the people you want on your team.
I think that's right. I've discovered one thing just sort of as I've grown up in the world, and obviously I'm in a career field that can be narcissistic and have some of its own issues, but it's self-awareness. I would want the folks that are on my team to have self-awareness. So if you're telling them, hey, you're not being a good team player, or you're not being, not like, I agree with Ben, likable, but getting along, you've got to be able, you've got to be able to be self-aware enough to know where you have faults. And I think that's one thing I have found in teams when people don't have self-awareness, that's where there's a breakdown, and including the leader. I know where my faults are, and I have so many mentors at different levels in my career and, outside my firm, that they know to tell me when I've reached a spot where, hey, do you know you're doing this? This isn't good for this project, or this isn't good for this client. And I know, and I've grown to just take a deep breath. I may not agree at first, but I'll listen and then realize. I think that's even in our parenting team, if you will. I always want to be right. And if he'll tell me, listen, this is what you've said or done, and I get my back up really quick but unfortunately, a lot of times when I actually listen, like, okay, there's some truth to that. I have, and so I do think self-awareness is probably one of the skills that we've got to teach folks so that they can actually take some constructive criticism and not constantly be defensive or, fail to actually listen and to make themselves better.
I love that part, and I'm a huge believer. And one of the things that I end up teaching is this concept called Johari's window, and it's this quad chart of how you can match up things for what you know about you, and what you don't know about, like for what you share about you, what you don't share, and what others know about you, and what others don't know. And so like that mix, I'm absolutely there. And what I tell people is when people give feedback, or like, hey, if you put you have to point out my blind spots, because it's my effing blind spot. Like, I am not going to ever see it unless you tell me that. So I'm absolutely on board. And then I love the concept of teamwork, and your ability to get along with somebody, communicate well in a way that at a bare minimum just fosters good tutorship, right? It may not be about the mission or the task at hand. Let's just be good human beings. So with that, not trying to get you to say out any names or any stuff like that, but for each one of you, have there been leaders, positively or negatively, that you identify with those very concepts that each one of you mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. I just throughout my career in different organizations, you can tell the people that are in it not for the organization as a whole, in it more for their self, interest. Or if you are, you think they may think they're not in it just for their own self-interest. And if you try to point out perhaps ways that they could lead better or do things differently to get more folks on board with something, and they won't listen. That's where I think I realized right away that, okay, note to self, that's why that team or that project or that group hasn't succeeded, because the leader is sort of being the, all powerful and won't take anyone's advice or guidance or, listen. So that's where I think I really, and I think being able to communicate with certain people and show them the error in their ways, or give them examples, and they don't even realize it. I've done that in some very subtle ways. Some people call it manipulation. I just call it helping people be better people. And it's been amazing to see changes in people, and then have some of my fellow colleagues recognize how I've helped change different perspectives. So sometimes referred to as a puppet master.
But again, and so, like one of the podcasts that we did just a couple of days ago with Chief Master Sergeant Brian Kraselnik, it's very odd because people think about manipulation all the time. I have people send me personality tests. If they work for me, I make them take like 6 or 7 personality tests, so I get a better feel for who they are and what I can do to get the most out of them. A pessimist is going to look at that like, oh, you want to be a master manipulator of that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I want them to have a righteous experience working for me. I want to be able to use their skills and their talent and their motivation and do everything that I can to make them the most productive they can be. But I just view that as efficiency rather than manipulation. So I think that brings up a very, very good point. But Ben, over to you and for your understanding of teamwork.
So I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by great leaders throughout my career, and those great leaders have become mentors to me. And I think a key with that, kind of my previous answer as far as being likable, is these leaders and these mentors took a personal interest in my life outside of work. Really, we're always asking about my wife and how Mara's doing, asking me about my kids. And so they, I really felt that it wasn't just a work relationship. It was, we are friends at work. We're going to be friends outside of work. And if we go our separate ways, we're going to be friends, down the road as well. And those two mentors, when I was coming over to Blue Scope just a year ago, I mean, they gave just the best recommendations that I could ever have asked for, and it was really flattering. And it was just they've always had my back. And again, I haven't worked with Augie Grosses from Handmark for 10, 12 years, and Paul Barker from Hallmark for 4 or 5 years, but they had my back then when I worked for them. They had my back when I needed their help, and they have my back now and in the future. And that's why I feel very fortunate to be surrounded by leaders like that throughout my career.
And let me say, I've had very, very good leaders. I don't want my answer to say that I haven't. I just meant that, sometimes it's helpful to help the leaders in your life, and that can help sort of make the leader that you are.
No, and I think that's a very good point to make as far as feedback goes, because somebody taught me long ago, feedback is kind of like beef jerky. It's salty, it's tough to chew on, but at the end of the day, it's good for you.
Right.
So I think people need to have that perspective that if you're coming to it from a place of kindness, compassion, and love, and you just want to see them do better, it doesn't have to be something that's hate-filled. But kind of along those lines, because, and I had this question teed up prior to your response there, Mara. But I mean, you guys are both talking about great leaders and great experiences that you've had on this leadership journey. Do you have any scar tissue? Do you have any things that has happened in your past that have shaped your understanding of leadership, or perhaps the practical application of leadership, because it's something that you've experienced? Now maybe it didn't have to deal with you yourself, but maybe it happened to somebody else and you witnessed that and liked it or didn't like it. Is there any scar tissue that you would want to share with anybody?
I think the scar tissue I have seen, and it hasn't happened to me, but it's kind of a, heed the warning of something that could happen. I mean, if you are brought into sort of a leadership role, and to the point of, you live, breathe. I mean, that is all you have time to do, and can't make time to see how you're being viewed on the outside, or what people are saying about you on the outside, or what the person that has put you in that leadership position might be, how you're being viewed because of that. If people aren't helping you and being honest with you in that, then when you're out of a position or move to a different position, sometimes then you have this sort of negative, people think of you negatively, and it's not fair. Sorry, our son.
Life is gonna
and
happen.
I mean this to say, that there are perceptions of people because of who they may be associated with that aren't fair. And so, you've got to help lift people up and make sure that they're not, completely burnt out, or, want to continue to contribute to the organization. And that, life is a roller coaster. And so you can have highs and lows, but to make sure we're supporting those that perhaps are in leadership positions, and, things change, terms end, and you may still want to be a leader. I think that's where, and I'm sorry, it's a very long, convoluted message, but the point is, things change. And if you're someone that's put a lot of time and heart into being a leader in a certain role, and your term changes or the leadership changes and you no longer have that spot, it can be really hard and you feel lost. And that doesn't mean you're not a leader anymore. And so I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is for people that are, kind of going through leadership positions, and I'll be at the firm 20 years and will ebb and flow in my leadership. So when I don't have a title, if you will, does that mean I'm no longer a leader at the firm? I sure hope not. And I want to help folks that as they transition to different things, because I think the scar tissue is you sort of feel like lost on an island once you've lost the official title. And I don't think that's good for anyone.
So with that, as far as connecting with people, as far as applying leadership in a way that obviously is going to help out any endeavor inside the confines of the workplace, but as far as connecting with human beings, as far as like how is somebody supposed to do that? How is somebody supposed to connect and show that they care? What have been your tricks, or what has been your understanding for doing the simple things that's going to help you connect with somebody that you work with and or lead?
For me, it's just making the time to have conversations and reach out and bring up, I know this is happening. What can I do to help you? Or, hey, or use it in a different way. Like, hey, you did this once, I'm now doing it. How can I do better? And how can I transition when it's my time to transition? Because then I think it helps them self-reflect. And I think, frankly, making sure that you're asking advice from those that have led before or done the same things makes them know that they're very relevant still, and that their advice is appreciated and needed, and that they're necessary, and that my success and the organization's success is still very much because of what they did and are still going to do. And if we don't have the advice of those that have already gone down a path, then we're going to fail if we're not learning from mistakes or successes that happened previously. And you just think, oh no, it's new, I'm going to do it my way. Well, I and others will fail if we're not taking heed in what others have done before us.
So when I started at Hallmark, I think that they did a really good job. My manager put together a list of 20 to 30 people that I needed to go meet. And, and then my job those first few weeks was to schedule, coffee, lunch with these 25, 30 individuals. So that networking was really important. So you kind of build your own network of friends. Hallmark had, thousands of employees at our headquarters. So, it can be a lonely place if you're only working with your boss and a couple of coworkers. So that gave me an opportunity to meet a lot of different people. I should have, I think, I spent 8 years there. I should have done a better job of continuing up that networking throughout the building, throughout the organization. Scheduling 15 minutes to touch base with people. And I know everybody's busy, but just doing it, just a quick cup of coffee, just so you're connecting and networking across the business. I think that's really important, not only for your personal, mental health and meeting and having a good network, but also, as new opportunities arise at your company or your organization, you're kind of more in tune with where the opportunities are. So that's something that I should do a better job of, is networking. You don't just want to network when you're looking for a job. You want to network while you have a job, while you're building your career all the time. You never stop networking.
So, it's funny you bring that up. I just, within the past 6 weeks, quit the first job that I had when I retired out of the military. Went to work for another one. So that kind of, I have a deep understanding of that concept as well. But as I went through that process, I realized how reliant I ended up being on social media to go do some of that networking stuff. And then realistically, as I went through this, I started having conversations about some of the different generational gaps that there are currently in the workplace. And so as both of you just kind of had your answers there, and had the ability to come out and speak to members of Mara's firm last summer, and we kind of had a small discussion about this, is what are your thoughts? And I'm not trying to pigeonhole one way or the other as far as boomers to millennials, right? And somehow us Gen Xers are kind of caught in the middle. But what do you see are the ways to help bridge some of these generational gaps inside the workplace? It ends up being a very, very weird topic, but for some reason, some people just can't get it together. And so what have you seen, good or bad, inside the workplace as it relates to that? And what are some of the steps do you think people can take to help that out?
So, this is my opinion on it. I think one of the challenges is when we stereotype somebody as a millennial or stereotype somebody as a boomer, it's going to create a bit of conflict already, because the millennial you just want to be, I am not, and again, I'm Gen X or whatever, but I don't want to be called a millennial. I don't want to be called Gen X and say, oh, well, this is how Gen X's are and this is how millennials are. That's probably what I think creates a lot of the conflict there. But I do think that there's definitely great opportunities to connect people of different generations. And so, like, going back to the networking piece of, if you're a new person on the marketing team and there's somebody that's been on the marketing team for 30 years, you need to sit down and have a 30-minute conversation to understand. You can learn from each other, okay? You can learn from each other. And it's not a generic stereotype of what you can learn from the millennial and what you can learn from the Gen X or Boomer or whatever generation that would be. It's more, what can I learn from you individually? What are you about? What are you about? Because they're going to have, the education, 30 years ago in marketing is way different than it is today. So that new hire at the organization has plenty to show and help the senior marketing manager, but vice versa as well. That new marketing person can't come in. They may be experts at social media and digital media and things like that, but this marketing manager is known, marketing and spent 30 years in marketing, and so they have a lot to teach that new hire as well. So again, I would just say having the opportunity to have those conversations, but definitely not framing it up as, hey, how can millennials and boomers work well together? It's how can you and I work well together?
You bet, absolutely.
I think that's very true. The issue is, regardless, and the generalizations are not good, but there is some truth to it, and it's trying to make sure when you've got sort of folks you're training and coming in, that they need to take a deep breath and slow down, that they're not going to be a partner in a day. And then also to those that are sort of heading towards retirement, that you're not retired yet. We need you, and we need you to give your skills to those, everyone kind of underneath. I think the hardest thing is, and it's not a positive thing to say, but if there's some good that comes out of what's going on in the world right now, it's sort of a reset, and it will be one where people will be humbled and need to figure out sort of what their strengths are and how they can succeed and go forward. And what's going to be a new normal. So I think that's going to be, you know, an unfortunate, but probably one of the positives that come out of it. You know, just with what we're going to see in unemployment and issues of that nature.
So I absolutely huge fan of both of those answers. That's one of my personal pet peeves, something that I call herd mentality, right? We just can't view people as the herd. You need to look at each individual for the individual talents that they bring, the motivation they bring, the experience. Just you know, like a millennial is going to bring a fresh perspective. And one of my buddies, David Satchel, is phenomenal on some of his study and understanding of millennials. Is like, you know, and again, if we're just going to focus on them, like are they the ones who've never been told no? Yes. Did they always get a trophy when they did whatever? Yes. Okay, great, got it. But at the same time, what I love about millennials is they've never been told no, but they also know that there's a yes to be found. They don't understand the concept of no, and you know, finding those yeses is absolutely right in their wheelhouse. So absolutely riveted by this conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with Ben and Mara Cohara, and we'll catch you here on the Cape Lead Revolution. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back from break. Here we are again with Mara and Ben Cohara, getting ready to take on the second half of our interview. So with this, before we get into some personalized questions for either one of you, let's give you kind of a scenario-based question here. So let's say inside each of your respective organizations, you were going to build a special team to handle a special task that's going to take about 2 months of work. Very arbitrary 2 months, right? So let's say you're going to build a 5-member team that you have working with you. Are there any specific character traits that you are going to look for, different personalities, different kind of quirks that you're going to look for to either include or exclude that's going to help this team find success?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, for really any team that I tend to pick, one, and it's what Ben had said earlier, can this person get along with, play well with others? Just because life is so short, and if you're spending most of your time trying to make people get along, then the team doesn't really work. But I think it's, you know, someone that's trustworthy and hardworking, and you know that if you ask them to do something or they take something on, they're actually going to follow through. So someone that, you know, has able to follow through, they're honest, again, self-aware, you know, if you don't agree with something they're doing, they're willing to listen. And I mean, I think that goes along with being humble too. Are they going to take the team over and try to show that they're the one, you know, that got the project complete and try to take all the credit? I mean, they've got to be team oriented, and they've got to want to do what's right for, you know, the team in general, because I don't think then at that point it would be successful. So I think hardworking, self-aware, get along, trustworthy, and follow through.
Yeah, so I think my answer is going to be similar as far as likable, hardworking, you know, obviously very smart. So maybe I would touch, kind of go a different direction on that. So on the question, so when I was at Hallmark, they had us take these personality tests, and it was interesting because then we would meet, and as a manager, it kind of gave you, hey, here are the, you know, 5-10 people on your team, and here are their personality types. And then they kind of gave you some advice on how to manage different people. And it was really interesting to me is that, you know, the manager has to adjust, the leader has to adjust to manage the team, where I was kind of thinking,
bravo, man, absolutely.
I'm going to get them in line. Like, you know, and it's really weird stuff, but I mean, because you think about it like, hey, my rule is you have to be on time. There's going to be people on your team that aren't on time, and you can either drive yourself crazy trying to get them to be on time, but some people just aren't. And it really blew my mind, because I'm like, well, how about they just learn to be on time, you know? And they're saying, no, this is how you have to manage people like that. Some people, you know, need a flexible work schedule. Some people, you know, won't speak up in a meeting unless you specifically point them out and said, what's your opinion on this? And so I just think it's interesting as far as you can pick your all-star team, and they may have a similar personality as you and what you look for. But the reality is, a lot of time you can't go pick that all-star team. These are the 5 people that you have on your team, and you need to adjust to be able to manage this team in the best way. And it takes different different approaches with different people. So I found that interesting at my time at Hallmark.
So that quite honestly could be the best combined answer I've ever heard in my entire life. So as far as Maura pointing out the character traits for the ideal person that you would want on your team, regardless of personality, and then Ben having your perspective of that a lot of people just miss is that, as these things happen, it's up to you to adjust to lead your team, right? It's not all these people that are going to adjust just to appease you as the leader. They're just appeasing you. But again, if you're able to go and adjust your leadership style, because again, people value things differently. People value time differently. I know I'm definitely an on-time person, right? Some people value communication to a better standard. They hate getting emails. They much rather talk. So absolutely. So having that values-based discussion is absolutely king. So with that, we've already kind of hit on trust, but Ben, kind of going forward with that mantra, and this one, Ben, for you specific, so I've got 2 questions I want to ask Maura. When you and I have had a conversation before, and I mentioned on one of my earlier podcasts back in 2018 is what is the definition of success? And I'd really like to let people hear your understanding and your definition.
Right. So because people have different measures for success, and a lot of times people think of, money or whatever, and or status and things like that. And I just disagree. I think it's all comes down to happiness, right? That is the true measure of success is, are you happy? So again, in your life and in your career, I think you have to find that balance because, you have to have that balance to find what makes you happy. And, I think your work life is a big part of it. I think your family life is a big part of it. And then what you do outside of work, right? That, do you have a social support system of friends and family? Are you active? What do you really enjoy doing? And so again, I look at, some of the things that I find that bring me the most happiness are, watching my kids play sports and things like that. And when I'm there, I'm happy. And, that's how I measure success is on a daily basis. Am I happy where I'm at right now? So.
And Maura, just kind of back and clean up. Do you have any other thoughts? Agree, disagree? Is there anything that you would add to that?
As long as Ben's happy, I'm successful.
That is true. That is a good point. That is a good point.
Oh, correction. That is now the best answer I've ever heard in my life.
Right. I just live to make Ben happy. That's my success.
That's an even better answer. But I don't know if you're that successful.
I would think you getting to coach and us being with our kids. Right. No, I think that's true. I mean, there's been times in my life where I've gotten really caught up in certain, getting a promotion or, a different leadership position and really, not being happy and talking to Ben about it and saying, but I'm this, but I got this raise. And he was like, yeah, but are you happy? And, are you really able to be there when the kids are playing a game, or are you on your phone the whole time? And thinking about work, which, probably this pause, if you will, in life is good for me because it's gonna, what's really important. And I honestly, I 100% agree with Ben. Sometimes it's hard to completely disengage from things to make yourself, happy but yeah, I think success ultimately is your kids want to talk to you, and does your husband still want to go on a date?
Oh, that's fair. Absolutely fair. And so, speaking of dates, I know growing up, Ben and I would go to a lot of movies. I know he's still a big movie buff. I'm a big movie buff. So Ben, as far as movies go, right? Are there any movies that maybe through a leadership lens that you could maybe talk about, or that you've liked, or like movie or TV show, or anything kind of outside the norm of books or TED Talks or podcasts? Or is there anything like that resonates with you?
So definitely Tiger King. I don't know. It is definitely something that I am watching. I don't know if there are any lessons to take out of that thing. So there are definitely some great quotes to come out of that show. I don't know if there are any lessons to be learned coming out of that show. But a couple things. I would get into the movies piece, and then also there's a professor at NYU. His name is Scott Galloway. And I think his Twitter handle is like Professor Galloway or something like that. But he does a weekly read, a weekly blog that I've always just found really informative. I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think a lot of times he opens up about his personal life, which I just find really interesting. He's had a lot of success throughout his career, but I think he's a brilliant business mind, and he'll be on, CNBC and, Fox News and a lot of these stuff. They get his opinions on different things. So I think he has some great content out there. And so it's a quick read, maybe 5-10 minutes a week. From a movies perspective, so something unique and interesting about me, I guess I would say, is I have seen every Academy Award nominated movie since I was born, right? So this was something that I did, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I would just see all the ones that were nominated, and then I just started working my way back on, different, while I traveled, I'd download a movie and watch it. And, there's a lot of duds on the way that I saw, but there's a lot of great movies that you see throughout. And I'm definitely a list guy, like as far as, all right, here's the 10 that got nominated this year. Let me go knock them all out. And so I just think, there's something that can be taken on a lot of these movies. And it may not have been this year, but it was probably a year or two ago. I think I cried in all 10 movies. I mean, they were just like, they were all different topics or whatever, but there was just that emotion. I think what I come out of from a movie is feeling that emotion. And it helps me relate to my own, experience or my own family. And so I like having that emotion. I like seeing those stories. But nothing, I apologize, nothing in particular as far as no specific movie or leadership advice from it, but just more, I do appreciate the getaway to spend some time and then just think how this relates to my life.
Awesome. So, we'll kind of talk more about finding some time to kind of get away and decompress and kind of zone out. We'll kind of end with some of those questions. But yeah, I absolutely agree. If you can set aside something with all the mess and all the hectic world that we live in and everything else, if you can go someplace, if you have I don't want to call it a simple, but a very easy to complete task of doing that. And if you have the time and bandwidth to go forward and watch all those things, that something that you can hit as an accomplishment, I think that's absolutely huge. And like Mara, going over there, I know you and I had spoken previously, and as a partner of inside a national law firm and very prominent there inside of Kansas City, we'd spoken before about some of the community involvement that you do, and community involvement that people are expected to do as executives inside of organizations. So what is some of the stuff that you do, and tell us a little bit about it?
So I'm currently on the National Board of Trustees for Campfire, and I'm also on the Board of Trustees for Park University, which I know is near and dear to your heart.
Indeed.
And I'm also on some executive women's leadership for the chamber in Kansas City. And then one that's been near and dear to my heart for years is one of the largest inner city daycares called Operation Breakthrough. And there's a group of lawyers a long time ago that started a group called LEAP, Lawyers Encouraging Academic Performance. And I've been a vice president of that and a board member for years. But, I've gone on and off of different boards. And one thing I've realized, I'm no good to a board if I don't have time or passion for it. And, at that point, they don't need me at that. And so for a long time, I had a hard time saying no. I probably still do. But I try to do and pick organizations that I know I can put time and make a difference in what I'm doing for that organization. And so of late, that's sort of been my desire, is I'm not going to say yes to everything, just do things that are important to me. And frankly, and a lot of it depends on who's also on the board of trustees with me. Who am I going to get to learn from? Who are new people I'm going to meet that can, help me sort of be a better person going forward. But, that's one thing I won't give up. It's hard because, I've got work and family and, then you've got your personal, but, definitely my civic involvements are, something that define me and are really important to who I am.
So that is pretty awesome, you know. And as far as from my understanding or my background in the military was that, you know, we all had to on a yearly basis kind of contribute one way or the other. But the fact that you get to do it out of something that is meaningful and is purposeful to you, something that you're passionate about, that's absolutely huge. And as you gave that answer, I'm hearing all the different things that you've done towards women's causes and women's initiatives. And again, on a personal level, the fact that we got to collaborate last year on a professional sense, where you had me out for your law firm's Women Initiative Network. Number one, thank you so much for that opportunity. I had an amazing time. It was a great meeting of everybody there. But two, you know, it sucks at the same time that you have to have some of those things for being females in a male dominated type of endeavors, such as the legal profession. So what has that been like for you? What has that journey been? How do you think that has progressed? Have we evolved enough? Are we trending upwards? I would like to think so, but that's not up for me to decide, and I have no capacity to understand that. So if you wouldn't mind talking to us a little bit about that journey, that'd be amazing.
Well, I mean, it started, my journey of being a woman in a male-dominated world basically started in elementary school when I wanted to play football with the boys, and they were skeptical, and then I threw the ball, and from then on, you know, I was one of the boys. I mean, I also had my girlfriends, but so I always had that attitude of, and this is where I try to mentor other women, you can't sit back and just expect to be part of, you know, a network, whether that's the old boys club or, you know, the men doing something or the partners in the firm that go to lunch. You've got to show that you want to be part of it and that you bring, you know, value and something to the table. So I started the firm, fast forward, first week, 2 weeks went by, the guys kept walking by and they were going to lunch. And finally, I just set my head out and I looked at all of them. I said, you know, I eat, right? And they all just kind of stopped and they were like, well, okay. And well, we're going to such and such restaurant, come with us. And I mean, from then on, a lot of those people aren't even at the firm anymore. I go to lunch with them monthly. They've become some of my dearest, you know, friends and mentors. But I had to put myself out there and I had to talk to them. And I think, you know, I've learned a lot from the men that are my mentors, but I think at the same time, I've been willing to help them be better, you know, versions of themselves and be more inclusive and understand why it makes sense to have, you know, men and women to be a successful group, an organization. And so, you know, you see a lot of, you know, diversity, inclusion, and you know, it seems more of just, you need to say you're doing it. I know our firm's really doing it. And it's because you know, we have people that are respected that aren't just saying we have to do it so that we can get clients, but are trying to live it. And so for me, it's been, you know, it wouldn't have, if I just sat and was silent and hoped to be included or hoped to get leadership roles or hoped to be put on certain trial teams, it wasn't going to happen. I had to go to the people and say, I want to be included. And another thing too, you know, when a lot of people don't like to have any sort of friction, or, you know, that's going to happen. People aren't going to get along. People are going to have disagreements. I've been someone that, call me a bull in a china shop. You know, I've been referred to that. If I find that there's something awry in a team or with, you know, my male partners, with, you know, other women, and they're not figuring out how to work together, I've always been one that I just sort of take it head on. I can't go to sleep. I can't sleep on it. I need to know what the problem is. How can we fix it? If we're not going to fix it, how are we going to go forward? And so I know our managing partner sometimes has women call me to say, hey, so-and-so needs advice on how to deal with this person. You know, you're sort of the blank whisperer. Can you help with that? And so I think people are realizing, I mean, whether I'm male or female, conflict is good because we grow from it, but being a woman in that sort of, and then also learning how to deal with conflict and not always being a part of the group or the gang or the team, and working myself into that and being trusted and being someone that, you know, gets included on the lunches or the after work drinks or whatever, but for positive reasons, I think has helped. And then it's helped me mentor other women. I was the only woman in our group 19 years ago. And now I'm the practice group leader. Half of our team is women. And, I'm not one of the women that said, I want to be that only woman. I don't want other women to succeed. This makes me better. I can be the one, top woman in the group. That does no one any good. And so I've learned from that very quickly that the only way we're better is if we sort of lead by example.
So with that, not asking you to speak for all women, but obviously specifically your opinion, do you think we as a society, or perhaps as a generalized workforce, do you think that we're getting better? Do you think that it's that people are doing the right things, that they're valuing people for the right things in a way that's tangible and repeatable?
I think it depends. I mean, to some extent, we get better until something becomes so important to someone that they're only going to think the way that they think. I think, frankly, we talk about what this sort of COVID-19 pandemic is doing. It's actually right-setting everyone. I mean, we're realizing what those that stay at home, what they have to deal with every day. So, if you're looking from a purely female perspective of parenting or whatnot, I mean, I have a lot more respect for the folks that I know that do this every day, now having kids at home while I'm trying to work. I mean, it's crazy, but it's also making, I think, male colleagues realize what their, female colleagues or male colleagues that have a more, are taking on the parenting load more. I mean, because we see that too. I think people are doing better. I think the more we talk about it but I think where you start to see the issues is when we're doing too much for someone, and others are feeling like they're not getting any benefit anymore, any extra training or anything like that. So then unfortunately, then you have people that are not being as positive about all that you're doing for inclusiveness. So it's kind of like a vicious circle at times, but as long as we make people realize that the more diverse an organization is, the more diverse the thought is, and that's, from age, ethnicity, male, female, the better off we all are, and that changes and helps the bottom line. I think we'll get better. So I do think, yes, I think it's getting better. Do I think it's like wonderful and we fixed the issue? No.
Fair. And again, as evidenced by the fact of how nervous I was, that was the first time in my life that I'd ever spoken at an all-female event, to where Ben actually sat down and went over the slides with me and gave me some feedback and constructive criticism. But again, do I think that the fact that I was nervous in preparation for that, is that pathetic? Absolutely. Absolutely. But again, for me personally, I relish the opportunity, really, really glad that I did it. And now looking back, there was probably really no need for me to be nervous with all that. But again, I think it's absolutely shitty that I was. So huge lesson learned for me. But again, now going back to both Mara, you and Ben, you're talking about community involvement. And you're talking about doing the things that, you don't want to give up something that is kind of near and dear to your heart. One of the things that I mentioned on my podcast with the help of Dr. Janelle McCauley is the oxygen mask analogy. Is that if you're on a flight and there's a sudden drop in cabin pressure, an oxygen mask fall from the ceiling, put on your oxygen mask before you help the person next to you. So I absolutely love that metaphor about us taking the time to get right with us as individuals before we try and be right for our spouse, our kids, our other family, our friends, heaven forbid, even our organizations and the teams that we help lead. So what do each of you do individually and then also together to put on your oxygen mask to make sure that you're the best Ben Cohara that you can present to the world, the best Mara Cohara that you can present to the world? What does that look like? So,
I guess my oxygen is a lot. It's my family. It's my friends. Especially with COVID-19, I mean, a lot of my oxygen that I'm used to, like just going out to dinner with the family or going over to my parents' house to have, Sunday dinner, a lot of that's been taken away, right? But, I still have oxygen. I just went on a bike ride, right? So do some things on my own. Went on a hike with the kids, last weekend. And but a lot of my oxygen comes from my family. Another big source for me is I coach both of my son and daughter soccer teams, and it's so rewarding. I've been doing it for 7 or 8 years now. And, I always thought that I would love to get into teaching. I doubt I have the patience for that, to be honest. So it's probably good that I did not. But, the thing with teaching is you have a new group of kids every year, right? You're teaching 3rd grade, you get a new group of 3rd graders every year. I get to see these boys and girls grow from 3 to 4 years old to 12, years old and older. And it's just so fun to watch their journey and to be part of their journeys. And so that is something that is really, really important to me. And sadly with COVID-19, that's been taken away for the time being, right? So it's a challenging time. You got to find other ways to get your oxygen during this time. But I tell you what, those couple of things, just going out to dinner with the family and getting back to soccer games, soccer practices, those are going to be on the top of my list when we get through this thing, which I'm really looking forward to.
Well, I think most people would say, for me, if I don't get a workout in the morning, that's my, drug. I'm not good to the family. I'm not good to my coworkers. I mean, I'll even get comments at work. Did you not get a run in today? Because that's what I need. That's my morning sort of release. But I think that's true. I mean, I just love I think traveling.
Yeah.
That's, if we need a reset, go away for the weekend. The idea of, because we are so social and we do love our family and friends, we don't do a lot, just the 4 of us. And so this current situation, doing a lot more, just the 4 of us, has been really great, but also at the same time, none of us are really used to it. And then it makes you kind of sad that maybe we had not spent enough, just, kind of straight, the 4 of us family time. So for me, it's getting the time to travel with our family and just being outside and enjoying our sort of lake community. Those are sort of my oxygen masks.
Nice. And that is so much fun. And obviously every time I come home to Kansas City, it is always great to link up with you guys. But again, for the viewers and listeners out there, Ben and Mara live on this amazing residential lake on the northern part of Kansas City near the airport. And so many of the high school friends that I went, and obviously their network of friends live right there on the lake. So every weekend, everyone's getting together. Kids are running all over the place, and they're on pontoon boats and jumping off. So like, what an amazing environment for kids to grow up in, and just all that camaraderie on a daily basis. So which kind of leads to one of my favorite questions, is that I think it's really important. So many people out there, when they see their leadership, no matter where it is, they kind of lose sight on the fact that individual is probably a mother, and or a spouse, and or a leader, or that leader inside that organization is a husband and father, and that they have family and all that stuff together. So one of the fun things to ask is what would you do in life if money were no object and you knew you could not fail? Right. So what is that stuff? Obviously, I maybe have a little clue about Ben's answer here, but what would that look like?
I would lead a philanthropy. I mean, I would want to be in charge of a philanthropy and just figuring out ways to help, whatever, and probably likely it would be something with children. But if money were no object and I could just I would want to try, do TED Talks on whatever philanthropy I choose and give money away. I mean, Ben, always laughs at me when the first time he had a job in San Francisco and I went out by myself, he came out, he's like, how much money did you give away, on the street? I mean, it's just one of those, I want to help people and then I'd also, in my then spare time for running a philanthropy, I would want to be a personal trainer.
Nice.
Because I like to yell at people and work out, and so I get to do both things.
I think that's a great answer. I would say travel the world. I'd always love to travel the world, but what are you doing? And I know money's not, but traveling the world, but how are you giving back? And so I think that would be, if we could figure out some sort of philanthropy, traveling the world, like Doctors Without Borders. It's just, we're not doctors. So we can help Doctors
We can
Without
figure
Borders
something out.
travel the world. But yeah, just, again, you get the opportunity to travel and enjoy yourself, but I don't think there's a ton of value there unless you're giving back. I just don't think that you would be rewarded. You would feel whole emotionally. And so I would still want to figure out a way to give back while enjoying myself throughout the world.
We thought you'd say you want to be own a soccer league.
I mean, I love coaching soccer. There's no doubt about it.
I think we
but
could have a not-for-profit soccer.
I can't do that 8-10 hours a day. I can do it maybe a couple hours a day. That's enough, and I love it. But that would be a little bit too much. Right?
Yeah. And I kind of figured somewhere in your guys' answer would be a huge love of travel. So that to me is like the beauty of Facebook, that even if friends can't see each other, you can kind of keep tabs. So just watching, the cruise you guys were able to do last summer, through the Med, it was just fun watching, your friends experience that, the kids and having fun and doing that. So keep it on the fun and lighthearted aspect of things. What is maybe one thing about you that the world doesn't know? Maybe it's just one of those guilty pleasures, but what's one thing that you're comfortable sharing that you would want the world to know about you, perhaps?
Well, you say the world, I'm kind of an open book. I think most people know most things about me. I love a good cry. I mean, I like to watch a Hallmark commercial or, anything makes me just tear up. And, then you kind of sort of feel better about yourself. And I love chocolate. So crying and eating chocolate. And I'm also addicted to green tea. And and then finally, anything where my brain can sort of shut off and not be challenged. So I like to watch the TMZ and if I ever had time, I always said I'd have a book club that would be nothing but like Us Weekly. And we'd all talk about because I don't, necessarily want to read a book. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that you took some time to answer that, because I was trying to think of my answer. Obviously, Tiger King, that was a guilty pleasure for sure. I got through that thing in like 2 days. But another show, I guess, that's a guilty pleasure is Below Deck. I just love Below Deck, and the whole family watches it and just.
We have kids.
It's not a bad, but it's the cruise. There's always the story behind the crew and the story about the people that are. Renting out the yacht. I find that really interesting. I guess the other thing that I would say is people may not know about me, and it's something I need to work on, as far as I think that I probably have a couple different personalities, and my work personality is very much respectful and patient and things like that. But when I get home, sometimes I would say that I need to work on my patience, right? So I don't keep that same patience, that same personality when I get home with the kids or with my wife. So that's something that I know that I need to work on.
Those are pretty amazing answers. And as I sit there and I look at your house, and we got a quick little glimpse of Meyer earlier as we go by. So for your daughter Meyer, for your son Macklin, as let's fast forward just 5-10 years as they're entering the workforce and growing into adulthood. What advice would you have that perhaps is contextually leadership based, for advice for them to help find success as they grow into adulthood?
Not to be lazy. Honestly, I love my children, and I'm not saying, but work your ass off, because while it's painful and you wonder if there's a payoff, if you work hard and work for that goal, it's going to pay off. But if life does not come easy, and if you think that it's going to come easy, you're going to be disappointed. And so I think they've learned from Ben and I, working hard pays off, and then you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And so that's something I think, it's hard to teach the younger generation, if you will, because things do kind of come easier. They're able to get things when they ask for it. But
yeah, I would say, things are starting to really matter for my kids pretty soon, as far as education and things like that. Nobody looks back on how Macklin did in third grade, social studies or something. But, as you get to high school, how you perform in high school and how successful you are in high school is going to determine your future from there and your next steps. And then same thing, if they choose to go to college is, hey, you got to go to school. A lot of people fail out of school. They don't go to class. If you want to get a great job, you got to work hard. And then, like Mara said, you have to work hard, and but also I want them to find happiness as well. And you can have both. I really stress that work-life balance. You have to work really hard, but I want you to be happy outside of work as well.
I don't want to be happy. I just want to work hard. I'm just kidding. I totally agree.
No, you know what, guys? We'll kind of call it wraps there with a podcast. But again, if anyone has tuned into my podcast before, you're hearing all elements of the Cape Lead Revolution here: the caring, the alignment, the perspective, the expectations. You're talking about Mara and her philanthropic ventures to do that. You're talking about alignment with not being lazy. Do what you need to do to find success. For lack of a better term, life is only at best going to meet you halfway. You have to do your part of that as well. Ben talked about being patient. Patience is a matter of perspective. And you can be only as patient as the things that you know about or can handle. And then, we talked at length about some of the different expectations that you would have of your children or the people that would work for you and your teams. So thank you both so much for being on the podcast. Mara Cohara, Ben Cohara, thank you so much. So I'll leave it up here for some parting words and thoughts of wisdom here.
We just love what you're doing and are honored that you would ask us to be part of it.
Yeah, Tim, you are such a wonderful leader, and we're so proud of you for your career and how you got here and went down the military path and got your degree after the fact, and then obviously retired from the military, and now starting your second career from there. I think it's really wonderful, and you're an inspiration to us both. So
and to say, if your organization is looking for someone to come speak about leadership, you've come twice now to my firm and have blown folks away. And so if you can blow a bunch of skeptical lawyers away, I think you can blow anyone away. And so do think, and it's a big plug to hire Tim at your next leadership function.
Well, awesome. I obviously appreciate the plug for that. But
and I wasn't paid to say that.
No, but for 30 years of friendship, for us being children growing up together, I can't thank you enough. Your friendship, your absolutely family is one of the things that I hold most dear in my life. And the fact that I have some amazing individuals that I can go out and interview and get phenomenal perspective from two people who are truly succeeding in life, who are successful in a very contemporary sense, but then also in Ben and Mara's definition of just being happy. And so to get to have two amazing friends that I get to be happy with for the rest of my life has been a true blessing. So thank you very much for being on my podcast. Thank you so much for being part of my life. And thank you for the time that you dedicated here to the Cape Lead Revolution. Everybody, that's a wrap here from Phoenix and Kansas City. We'll catch you here next time on the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll talk to you later, everybody. See ya.